Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. If you've ever looked at the financial markets and felt like it's some sort of exclusive black box where only the big institutional players hold the keys, well, you are definitely not alone. Today, we're unpacking something pretty interesting, the PFA Institute's Build Your Own Dashboard framework. We're going to see exactly how they propose closing that massive gap between everyday retail investors and the big professional quant funds. We'll look at the tools they're handing out, the educational paths they've set up, and the whole philosophy driving their platform. Let's get right into it. So we're kicking things off with this really provocative statement right from the source material. It hits the nail on the head regarding the core problem, information asymmetry. Look, we hear it all the time, right? The stock market is rigged against the little guy. But this framework pushes back on that completely. Their take is that the market itself is actually neutral. The real issue, retail investors are basically bringing a knife to a gunfight. They're flying blind, completely missing the robust, real-time data sets that the pros rely on every single day. Which brings us to our first main point, the retail information gap, and what's really at the root of these retail losses. And this comparison brilliantly illustrates that exact issue. Think about the typical retail investor for a second. They're often making decisions based on, news headlines, super basic price charts, or maybe just a gut feeling. It's literally like trying to navigate a sprawling, complex highway system while completely blindfolded. Now, contrast that with a professional fund manager on the right. They are armed to the teeth with advanced statistical tests and historical probability models. So the argument here is that closing the gap isn't about somehow changing the whole market. It's just about upgrading the retail toolkit so that it actually matches what the pros are using. All right, so how do we actually level that playing field? Let's talk about their proposed technological solution. Enter the PFA Quantum Alpha Terminal, and honestly, what immediately caught my eye here is just how accessible it is. We are talking about an institutional-grade tool, but it runs entirely in your standard web browser. No crazy supercomputer required. It crunches over 20 different technical indicators and runs statistical tests that any major quant fund would instantly recognize. And here's the real kicker. This baseline terminal is currently available completely for free. Of course, a tool like this is really only as good as the data it processes, right? Well, this isn't just limited to your standard domestic equities. It tracks a massive global universe. We're talking major Indian heavyweights like Reliance and HDFC, sitting right alongside global tech giants like Apple, Microsoft, and Nvidia. It even pulls in broader market ETFs and alternative assets, like Bitcoin and Ethereum. So it gives you this really comprehensive macro view of the markets, all in one spot. Now, I know what you're thinking. What's the catch? While the core tool is indeed free, the source does note one specific caveat because, let's be real, custom developer time is never free. If you find yourself needing bespoke, pre-scoped development support to tweak things on the back end, there is an optional subscription fee of 5,000 Indian rupees per month. But for your everyday user, that core dashboard, still completely free. Okay, so let's peek under the hood. What exactly does a quant fund actually see when they look at this data? The documentation breaks the terminal down into these 5 highly structured analytical modules. And this is where you really shift away from just staring at naked price charts and step into the actual world of algorithmic data. You're no longer just watching a squiggly line go up or down. Instead, you're measuring underlying momentum, you're checking out seasonality and calendar patterns, and you're running quantitative statistical tests. It's a whole different ballgame. The absolute crucial takeaway here is the depth of access you're getting to these professional metrics. Look at momentum, for instance. You've got classic quant staples like the 14-period RSI and MACD histograms. For volatility and risk, they're tracking max drawdowns and return distributions. They even map out monthly return heat maps, which is exactly what quant funds rely on heavily to spot calendar-based anomalies. This is literally the exact kind of data that is usually locked away behind massively expensive enterprise software. But, and this is a big but, the source makes a really fascinating pivot here. It's a hard truth learned over 16 years of market experience. A tool is, at the end of the day, just a tool. The dashboard can definitely show you the what, like, say, a sudden massive spike in volatility. But if you don't actually know how to interpret it, it's kind of useless. If you don't understand the why behind the numbers, or exactly when to execute a trade based on them, all these fancy metrics simply aren't going to save you. Which brings us to the next piece of the puzzle. The educational pathways designed to help you actually understand all this. To solve that knowledge gap, the PFA Institute designed 3 distinct educational pathways. Think of it as a sequential journey. First up is the Builder, which teaches you to deploy your own dashboard using AI tools like Claude. And get this, absolutely zero coding knowledge is required to start. Once you've got that down, you move to the reader, where you learn the applied technical analysis context for the data you're seeing. And finally, for those who want to go all the way, there's the practitioner, which is a long-duration, intensive mentorship focused heavily on deep data validation. So what does this structured learning actually cost? This breakdown shows the exact financial commitment for each tier. That entry-level builder program will set you back 999 rupees. The middle tier, the reader, is priced at 25,000 rupees, and a quick note on that one, you actually have to join a WhatsApp waitlist because they strictly cap that first cohort at just 50 seats. Finally, that top-tier practitioner mentorship, that ranges anywhere from 50,000 to 200,000 rupees, depending on whether you opt for the 2-month track or the really intensive 6-month duration. Now, before anyone rushes off to start trading based on these professional metrics, we really need to talk about ethics and the essential fine print. The source material grounds all its claims with some very necessary reality checks. They state, neutrally but firmly, that this dashboard is strictly for informational purposes. It is absolutely not financial advice. As always, past performance does not guarantee future results, and you should never look at a data point on your screen and treat it as a guaranteed buy or sell signal. At the end of the day, the sole responsibility for any financial move you make lies entirely with you. And honestly, those disclaimers tie perfectly into their overarching mission. This whole framework isn't just about handing out shiny new tools. It's about trying to spark a real cultural shift. Their stated goal is to cultivate a community of ethically driven investors, people who swap out blind retail speculation for actual research, strict risk management, and rational frameworks to create sustainable and consistent financial outcomes. Which leaves us with this final, really provocative thought to chew on. We've just seen how the structural data disadvantage that retail investors face can basically be wiped out with a free tool like the Quantum Alpha Terminal. But as we learned, having the data is only half the battle. Now that professional-grade information is literally just a browser tab away, the only thing standing between you and the professional fund managers might just be education. The tools are right there for the taking. The real question is, are you ready to invest the time to actually master the why and the when? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. I hope this deep dive gave you a much clearer, structured view of how they're approaching quantitative investing.